The fireplace that wasn't lit, a mystery hidden in the smoke. Fireplaces, a history of alternative energy. Forward, secrets hidden in the smoke. Hello, dear listener. Have you ever wondered why in old mansions, where the frost would chill you to the bone, the fireplaces were so huge and useless? Why, judging by old engravings, did the smoke go not up the chimney, but straight into the faces of the noble people? Were the people of the past so foolish that they couldn't build a proper stove? Or were these not stoves at all? And what if I told you that these fireplaces weren't for warmth, but for something entirely different? What if some devices were hidden inside them, and the strange sports cups and balusters on the stairs and roofs were actually elements of a large energy system? And what if the two-stringed musical instruments, similar to balusters, weren't for music at all, but for something more complex? Perhaps the answers to these questions do not lie in history books, but in the forgotten walls of an old mansion. I invite you into a world where two completely different views of the past collide, the strict logic of official science and a curious mind that seeks the truth beyond it. Are you ready to find out what old fireplaces are hiding from us? Chapter 1. The fireplace that wasn't there. A sunbeam that broke through the dusty window landed on Alexei's face. The young archaeologist didn't like that. He didn't like anything interfering with his workflow, especially sunlight. Taking an old hat from the windowsill, he pulled it down over his head, hiding his light disheveled hair, and leaned over the mansion's blueprint again. Count Belozerski's mansion, officially built in the mid-19th century, was a real headache. The job was entrusted to him. A young, ambitious specialist who at age 27 had already excavated several burial mounds and written a couple of scientific articles. But instead of mounds, he got creaky floors, chipped paint, and the mystery that he couldn't solve. In the center of the largest living room, where balls and receptions were supposed to be held, stood a massive fireplace. Alexei walked around it on all sides. The height of the firebox was so great that an adult could freely enter it, and its width exceeded all reasonable limits. By all calculations, this fireplace could not have been used for heating. It was just a decoration. "I don't get it," Alexei muttered, as he ran his hand over the rough stonework. "Why did they build it at all? It's completely inefficient. There's not even a place for firewood." "And you won't understand, young man, as long as you look at it as a simple stove," a hoarse voice said from behind him. Alexei flinched and turned around. An elderly man stood before him. A sly smile played on his face, which was etched with wrinkles. He had gray beard, long, unkempt hair, and was wearing an old but clean tweed jacket. In his hand, he held a folder with some papers. "Hello," Alexei said politely, not understanding who this was. "Who are you?" "I am Lev Semyonov, an expert." The man extended his hand. "I've been assigned to figure out this misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Alexei repeated in surprise. "This is an architectural monument." "A monument?" Lev Semyonov chuckled. "It's a monument to our official stupidity. Do you think that the people of the 19th century were so naive that they built fireplaces that don't heat? I think we just don't know how they worked. Look," he pointed to the fireplace. "Do you see this metal sheet on the back wall and these two cups looking like chalices in the corners?" Alexei rolled his eyes. Here we go again. He had already heard similar theories from other alternative history enthusiasts hired for consultations. They all came down to the idea that ancient civilizations were super advanced, and we simply don't understand their technology. "These are decorative elements, Lev Semyonov." Alexei tried to speak as calmly as possible. "The sheet is just a reflector, and the cups are for decoration." "For decoration?" he laughed. "For decoration, you say? Young man, it seems to me you've spent a lot of time reading Wikipedia. I, on the other hand, have spent it observing. If it were just for decoration, they wouldn't have made them so complex. And why would they be needed if you can't pour anything into them? Do you really think that all these complex structures, all these conductors that we see in the walls, were just random? Conductors in the walls?" Alexei raised an eyebrow questioningly. That's just old wiring, from the 19th century. Wiring, the old man nodded, only it leads to nowhere. And it's metal, by the way, just like this sheet. Do you feel what I'm getting at? No. I feel like we're wasting time. Time is the only thing we have, and if we don't use it to ask the right questions, then we're just burning it away for nothing, like firewood in this fireplace, which, by the way, no one ever burned here. Alexei grimaced. The conversation with this oddball was starting to tire him. He preferred facts, not guesswork. But Lev Semyonov didn't stop. He pulled out an old engraving that showed the same fireplace and pointed his finger at one of the details. Do you see? This isn't a fireplace. This is a machine. Alexei scoffed, but for a second his gaze lingered on the engraving. As a professional, he noticed one small but very strange detail that he couldn't explain. It was a symbol that wasn't usually placed on decorative elements, and it was familiar. What is that symbol? Alexei asked, forgetting his skepticism. That, young man, is the symbol that means we've just found the first thread leading to the solution, and that solution will shock you.
Chapter 2. A dispute about time and smoke. The symbol. Alexei looked at it, and only one thought spun in his head. He had seen it somewhere. Not in old engravings, no, in some book, in some very old, forgotten book. It looked like a stylized letter, but at the same time it was something else, something that went beyond the usual alphabets. "Well, what do you say, young man?" Lev Semyonovich asked triumphantly, watching his reaction. "Do you admit that your mind, stuffed with official dogmas, is unable to process this?" "It's just a flourish, or a master's mark," Alexei replied hastily, returning to his skepticism. "Anything could be drawn. A flourish that is found everywhere on all similar engravings, but only in one place, near fireplaces?" The old man shook his head. "You seem to have forgotten that I am also an archaeologist. I just don't study the earth, I study history. I look for what official science prefers not to notice." "And I seek the truth based on evidence," Alexei retorted. "Where is your evidence? Besides an engraving and your guesses, you have nothing." "Guesses are the first step to the truth. Without them, you would still think the earth is flat. Take these fireplaces, for instance. Look at them. They have a chimney. Experts say that in a warm climate, the draft is even worse. So why were they needed at all? If not for heating, then for what? For furniture? Perhaps the climate was milder, Alexei suggested. Milder? Lev Semyonovich laughed. Imagine 19th century Holland. Severe frost, huge rooms, and people sitting in them, trying to get warm by a fireplace that doesn't heat. That's just nonsense. And then what's the chimney for? For letting out smoke from torches? Does it not seem to you that it all somehow doesn't add up? I think people weren't always practical. They might build something for prestige, for beauty. This is a count's mansion after all. Prestige, the old man grumbled, as if people would suffocate from smoke for the sake of prestige. On the engravings, by the way, you can see how smoke from the fireplaces goes directly into the rooms. How do you explain that? Low-quality firewood? Or low-quality calculations, Alexei cut in. Not everyone was a brilliant craftsman. And you think everyone was an idiot? Lev Semyonovich became serious. I tell you, young man, that we are not looking at this fireplace from the right angle. This is not a hearth, it's something else. And this symbol, I recognized it. It's not just a symbol, it's a key to understanding how everything in this house worked, and possibly not just in this one. Alexei felt his professional curiosity take over his skepticism. He looked at the engraving, at the mysterious symbol, and the old man who, it seemed, saw something more than he did. There was a crazy logic to his words that, despite its absurdity, had a right to exist. "Okay," Alexei said, exhaling. "Let's say you're right. What next? What kind of machine is this, and what did it do?" Chapter 3. Secrets of the Metal Sheet. Lev Semyonovich, with the smile of a victorious general, pointed his finger at the fireplace. "Young man, this machine didn't do, it did. It's in the past tense, and now we will find out exactly what." He approached the fireplace, examined it carefully, and asked Alexei to help him move an old, heavy bookshelf that stood against the side wall. The archaeologist, sighing, braced his shoulder against the oak furniture. Together they managed to move it, and behind the shelf, a small hidden niche was revealed. In it was an old wooden box. "I knew there was something here," Lev Semyonovich whispered, wiping away the dust. "It's always like that in old houses. No one throws anything away. They hide everything." Opening the box, he took out several old papers and a small, elegant metal plate with the same symbol that was on the engraving. Alexei, forgetting his skepticism, couldn't take his eyes off the plate. "This is a key," Lev Semyonovich said. "In a literal sense, it opens what has been closed to us for centuries. Look." He took the plate and inserted it into a small hole located in the lower part of the fireplace behind a metal grate. A dull click sounded. Lev Semyonovich pulled on a protrusion, and the back metal sheet, which Alexei had considered a simple reflector, shifted slightly. "Here it is, the heart of the machine," Lev Semyonovich announced triumphantly, sticking his hand into the created gap. They carefully pushed the sheet aside. Underneath it was a flat metal plate with some devices embedded in it. One of them resembled a cup, just like the one standing in the corners of the fireplace. From it, thin copper conductors went off in different directions, disappearing deep into the wall. "What is it?" Alexei whispered. "It's a generator," Lev Semyonovich said. "And these copper conductors, it's a system that powered the whole house." "But what powered it? Fire? But you said yourself there was no smell of firewood." "Correct," the old man chuckled. "Fire, but not the kind we're used to seeing. I think they weren't burning firewood in the firebox, but something else. Something that caused a strong eddy current. And this current hit this plate, causing it to heat up. Our text says that, and the density and current strength was such that the metal there repented and began to emit heat. These are not just words. This is a description of a physical process." "But how? What was this fuel?" Alexei was bewildered. He couldn't find an explanation for this based on his knowledge. "I think they were burning oxygen or carbon dioxide. It also says so in the text. Look. And the process was carried out by burning oxygen or carbon dioxide." Alexei shook his head. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Burning gases to get heat? It seemed absurd. But all the facts they had found indicated that the old man was right. The conductors in the walls, the metal sheet, the cups, it was all part of some incomprehensible system. "So the fireplace wasn't for heating, but for—" Alexei began, but Lev Semyonovich interrupted him. "It wasn't for heating, but for generating energy. The heat we see is just a side effect, and the main product is electricity, which traveled along these conductors throughout the house.
But then why the chimney? Where did the smoke come from? Perhaps the chimney isn't for smoke, the old man replied, mysteriously, squinting his eyes slyly.
Chapter 4. The air that was missing. Alexei stood as if rooted to the spot. The chimney wasn't for smoke? The idea was so absurd that even his scientific skepticism cracked. For what then? For something else, he repeated, as if trying to grasp the meaning. His brain, trained on hard facts and evidence, refused to accept such a fantastic hypothesis. For what then? Lev Semyonovich, ignoring the young man's bewilderment, walked right up to the fireplace and ran his hand along its inner surface. There wasn't the slightest hint of soot, not a trace of grime, only a light layer of ancient dust, just like on all the surfaces in this forgotten house. "Look," the old man said, showing his palm. "Clean. No trace of combustion. But if they were burning something there, even a gaseous fuel, there should have been some trace left. Carbon monoxide? Soot? But there is nothing here." "That's probably because the fireplace wasn't used," Alexei countered, trying to get the conversation back on track. "It was just a decorative piece." "Decorative," Lev Semyonovich snorted. "Have you ever seen how soot weathers away? Have you ever seen 19th century architects, even for decoration, build such complex yet non-functional systems?" "No, young man. The chimney wasn't for venting smoke. It was for the intake, or rather, for the outflow, but not for what you think." "For what then?" Alexei felt his heart pounding. He was on the verge of some kind of discovery, but his brain was desperately resisting, unwilling to accept this insane hypothesis. "Let's turn to your favorite sources," Lev Semyonovich said. "Your text says, 'Convection, according to Wikipedia, has nothing to do with it, but anyone who has ever had a fireplace knows that it creates a problem. Smoke begins to come out and pollute the air.' Well, our text gives us a clue. The chimney was not in vain because of contact with hot iron, the air spoiled and was harmful to health, and here it was just removed thanks to convection. Pay attention to removed, not vented, not released, but specifically removed. As if it didn't just exit, but disappeared, transformed into something." "Are you saying the fireplace wasn't an exhaust vent, but an air purifier?" Alexei couldn't hide the irony in his voice. "Exactly," the old man exclaimed, as if not noticing the sarcasm. "It was part of a complex system that not only generated energy, but also purified the air. It was a brilliant but forgotten technology. This system apparently burned oxygen or carbon dioxide, creating eddy currents. These currents not only powered the generator, but also somehow purified the air. That same spoiled air. The text says so directly." He pointed to the inside of the chimney. On its walls, which Alexei had not previously inspected so carefully, he could see the same copper conductors that ran down to the generator. They carry current not only down, but also up. An eddy current field is created that sucks in the spoiled air and does something with it. We don't know what, but this process was apparently so important that they built a separate system for it. And only thanks to it, the air in the house was fresh and clean, despite the fact that it was the 19th century, a time when people suffered from poor ventilation and indoor pollution. Alexei, as if mesmerized, stared at the chimney. His brain, accustomed to clear logical explanations, began to short-circuit. Everything the old man said sounded like a madman's delusion, but all the facts they had found did not contradict this delusion. On the contrary, they confirmed it. So, Count Belozorski wasn't just a count, he was an engineer, a great engineer, Lev Semyonovich finished for him. And he knew a secret that we, it seems, have only just begun to uncover. At that moment, when Alexei touched the inner wall of the chimney, a quiet, melodious sound came from within. It was similar to the ringing of glass goblets, but much lower and deeper. "What is that?" Alexei asked, fearfully, pulling his hand away. "That, young man," Lev Semyonovich smiled, "that means that this machine is still working." Chapter 5. The Echo of Lost Technologies. The melodious chime, like a gentle, deep bell, continued to sound and then suddenly fell silent. Absolute silence ensued. Alexei and Lev Semyonovich froze. Both fear and disappointment were visible in their eyes. "I knew it," Lev Semyonovich whispered excitedly, but his eyes no longer shined, and his voice held sadness. "But why did it stop working?" asked Alexei, who could still not recover. "I think it doesn't run on fuel, but on something that is always in the air, maybe on some type of energy that we don't know about. And the fireplace was just a converter that caught that energy and turned it into electricity. And the chimney, I guess, was some kind of resonator, amplifying the signal." "This is madness," Alexei whispered. "This completely crosses out everything we know about history." "And that's great," Lev Semyonovich laughed, but there was no joy in his laughter. "Because history is not what is written in textbooks, but what we find. Ask yourself, why did such a large house need another fireplace, especially one that doesn't heat? Our text says, look at this fireplace. There's not even room for firewood, but this is a real fireplace, as it should be. Judging by its appearance, it's contained more like a museum exhibition, and you can't burn it with wood. You guessed it." And indeed, it was a museum of lost technologies. The sound completely stopped. In the ensuing silence, Lev Semyonovich took another plate from the box, which looked like a thin, polished crystal. He carefully placed it against one of the cup-like chalices. The plate did not light up, and no spark ran along the conductors going into the walls. Nothing happened. The mansion remained dead and cold. "We didn't wake them up," Lev Semyonovich whispered. "The echo of the past remained just an echo. I didn't think I would live to see this day." "And now what? What are we going to do?" Alexei asked, looking at the empty chandeliers and the silent gramophone. "Now?" the old man smiled. "Now we will show this to the world. We will tell them that the people of the past were not dumber than us, that they knew secrets that we lost, that history is not only what we see, but also what we seek. And if we search long enough, we will find how it works." Alexei finally understood why this fireplace annoyed him so much. It was too simple, too obvious. And now that the mystery was not fully solved, he felt not just like an archaeologist, but a real researcher, a person who had found not just an artifact, but a key to understanding the past. And now he had to find the answer to how to use this key. They left the room, leaving silence and darkness behind. The sunbeam that had bothered Alexei at the beginning now seemed like a challenge. For now they were not just people who sought answers, they had become those who would seek them to the very end.